So you're at a sweat lodge and you've had inspiration and change. So what was that, and where from there?
Well, the because of the experience being so dynamic, and it impacted me in just a very powerful way, and as a result of what happened afterwards, which I actually, through a number of processes, I actually ended up having a near-death experience, and there were quite a few things that are really highly personal that I won't go into now, but it was so profound that it really altered my life, and it altered how I viewed life. It altered how I felt life was going to be, and so over a matter of a couple of years, well, it took me a year to just really kind of assimilate everything that went on, and I started to travel. I went to Greece and I went to Egypt, to the Great Pyramid of Giza, and through all these kinds of experiences that unfolded after that, it just grew in its effect. It just grew in its dynamic compounding effect. The more experiences I had, the more I knew this was something I had to stay with. And so it ended up really becoming my life. I mean, since that day, my life has never been my life, and I have, had many profound experiences that have come since then, and it just is, it's so important to me, and it's important for all of us, that when we have a purpose and we're really passionate about it, that's what we should be doing. And so that's why I've stayed with this. And it is, now that I'm into it 22 years later, I can see why it was essential for me to go through this whole process, just for my own evolutionary process, in terms of how I've evolved, how I've matured, and what I've gotten out of it in terms of for my own personal benefit.
So explain to me this John Francis. Is he guiding himself, or is he being guided?
That's an excellent question. Am I being guided, or am I guiding myself? Well, over the years, I've probably had to go through that process of discerning, is this the mind saying, oh, you should be doing this? Or is this really some kind of input energetically? And, it's taken a long time to really discern and distill, to fine tune that. And the funny thing is that through my own evolutionary process, this has become more innate. I have more understanding. I have a deeper knowing. I have a lot more compassion around what I'm doing. And I'm not really being driven by the mind. I'm not really being driven by the self-interest. Not really even being driven by the ego, although all of that is still present in some way. But it is really more just something that I have such a powerful belief in, and that I do get guidance through synchronicity and things that happen that come into my life naturally. And then there are those that my own intuition, my senses, my sixth sense has increased through this process. And so that the closeness of what I would call my world and the spirit world having the overview, the spirit world knowing what's coming, what's going on. I would say that my, intuitive, my telepathic talents and skills have become, my clairvoyance has expanded dynamically. So it is a fine walk in terms of, is this coming from me? Is this coming from external? But is there, in the end, is there anything different between the internal and the external. As we get closer to who we really are, that knowing, that understanding, that capacity to see into the unknown is enhanced, and so it's a process of refining that, and that's probably what I've been through over the last 22 years, is that refinement process, so that I could get the self and the mind and the ego out of the way, so that I could just be in a pure experience of being open. And when I'm not in a mind state or a thinking state, there's a stillness, there's a quietness, and that's where the guidance comes in.
All right, then let's ask the guided one, what is the future without change?
What is the future without change? And clarify that before we go.
Nothing's done. What does it look like?
Nothing's done. What does it look like? Well, okay. I mean, if I could answer this a number of ways in terms of, okay, we're looking into the future. The best way to look into the future is look back 10 years and see how it's pointing, what it's pointing towards, and that's a pretty good indicator where you're going. I mean, if the barometer is is the compass, and the compass is, and we look back and go, okay, that's where we've come from, you can kind of line up, but well, that's where we're going. So that trajectory is a way of seeing the future in and of itself. Look at global events. Look at the intensity of global events. Look at the frequency of those global events. And we're in a period where that intensity and that frequency is picking up more and more and more. And the pace of life is picking up more and more and more. So the future certainly, part of the future is going to be certainly a rapid rate of constant change is going to be part of that. What those changes are specifically, we can look back 5 years, 10 years and see what's been happening, and have a very high probability that they're going to continue. You know, whatever is happening is going to continue to happen. I sense the most important thing here is to reflect on, is what's happening in our best interest? In other words, if we're intelligent people, is what we are choosing personally and collectively, is that really in our best interest? And are some of the global events that are taking place in our best interest? I mean, we have oil coming out over in the United States and the Gulf of Mexico at an ungodly rate. And so is that in our best interest? Is that contamination going to help the fish and the wildlife and people who have their living based on that? And on the other side of that is, because of that, are there going to be massive changes that come as a result of that? So, you know, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg.
Okay. Now we're going to ask the guided one also. Now, if there is going to be change, what does that future look like?
My sense, and you have to realize that, you know, the intuitive, the guidance that's been coming to me has been happening for quite a long time, and you know, I've really backed away from it over the last couple of years, just because I wanted to take a break from it, and I wanted to give the world a chance to see, you know, the world experience of what was happening, if those things aligned with how I was being guided to see it. In other words, did the things start to happen